let's see, Eldon's asking, can solver be created to indicate a crossover of two moving averages from a different data series? So for example, a crossover of an EMA 8 period on a 1 minute chart and an EMA 4 range. Okay, so Eldon, yeah, technically that is possible. And I'll show you how to do this technically, and then later on I'll explain kind of the a little issue with NinjaTrader as to why it's not 100% reliable. Just so you guys know, right? So while this is something you can build in BloodHound, I wouldn't trust it as a fully automated system. Right, and I'll explain why in a moment here, but let's build this first. Alright, so you want to deal with EMAs. Okay, so let's see. This red one here is an EMA, and we'll do an 8 period. And alright, a 1 minute and a 4 range. Okay, so let's change, actually, I think I'll change the chart to, let's see what's going to move faster. 4 range is going to move faster, yeah. So change the chart to 4 range. So you're going to want to kind of estimate, you know, which of the charts is the faster moving chart. And I guess it depends on the instrument. Since I'm on oil, you know, a 4 range oil chart, 4 range on oil instrument is probably going to move faster than a 1 minute. So I'm going to change the default chart to 4 range, and let's see, I'm going to add a 1 minute on here. And I'm going to make this 1 minute invisible. So just a moment while I turn everything off. Alright, and it's also good to make sure that your session template on your chart matches up. Alright. Okay, and you know, unfortunately this messes up the chart. However, I do want to get both of the EMAs on the chart here so we can see what's going on. So at least that way we can visualize it. Okay, so we want another 8 EMA, and I'll make this one white. And we're going to put this one on the 1 minute chart. There we go. Okay. Alright, good. So it looks like we have a couple of crossovers there that we can work with. Yeah. Alright, so there we have it on the chart. Okay, so now let's dig into BloodHound, and I'll show you how to do this in BloodHound. Okay, let me name today's session template. Hope everybody's Friday the 13th is going pretty good so far. So we're going to build a crossover solver here. And actually, let me make a start working on the logic templates here. All right. All right. An EMA 8 crossover. Actually, let's see. So this is going to be a 4 range. let's add a crossover on here. Alright, so indicator A, I'm going to set that to the EMA on our default chart, right? So our default chart is considered the 4 range. Alright, so we'll just, all we need to do is just change this to an EMA 8. Like so. Okay, and the EMA 8 on the 1 minute chart, I'll put that down below because that's, I'm making the assumption that that's the slower moving average. And you know, I guess I could say it definitely it looks like on this chart that the 1 minute chart, the EMA on the 1 minute chart does appear to be the slower moving EMA. So I'm going to put the EMA on the 1 minute chart down here in the indicator B section. Alright, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to do some nesting now. So let's add the EMA on there. There's our EMA. Alright, so now we need to get the 1 minute data into that EMA. So we're going to use SI Chameleon to do that. Right, so I just click on it once. You click the nesting button right there. And alright, so now I need to click on Chameleon. And you'll notice that Chameleon has this alternate time frame that we can use here. So I need to set that to true, and NinjaTrader, right, defaults it to a 1 minute chart, so I don't need to change anything. So it's already defaulted to a 1 minute chart, right? So there we go. So now Chameleon is going to take data from the 1 minute chart and feed it into the EMA. And the next thing we have to do is decide, you know, what price data do we want, and we probably don't want to feed the high prices into the EMA. We probably want to feed the closing prices. So let's click on that, and now that feeds the closing prices into the EMA. And there we go. All right. And let's take a look. And it looks like for the most part, it's kind of interesting. Something I just, you know, as long as I've been using NinjaTrader, it seems like there's always something new I'm learning. You notice the width of the racing stripes is changing. It varies, and that's because the scaling applied to the chart. You know, when you've got 2 different time frames on your chart, it's funny. It doesn't scale the bar widths, but the shading it does. So that this vertical shading, we can see, has really changed. So like on this green signal, this long signal, the green shading is really narrow, and the green shading on that's really wide. But there we can see that, yeah, thankfully it's actually working out really good. So that's how you do it technically. Yeah, right. So in theory it works, but just be aware that NinjaTrader has a little bug inside of it that shows up from time to time. It's nothing consistent, but it is something that you need to be aware of if you're going to try and automate this. So the issue is with NinjaTrader, when we're doing this nesting, it all comes from nesting. So what happens is that the proper order that NinjaTrader needs to process these indicators, right, is that obviously Chameleon has to be calculated first to generate the 1 minute data and then feed it into the EMA. But what happens sometimes is that NinjaTrader calculates the EMA first across the whole chart and then it calculates chameleon, well, or basically whatever indicator, right, the child indicator that's being fed into the parent indicator. And so, right, so if NinjaTrader calculates the parent indicator, which would be the EMA first, then there's no data, there's no information from the child indicator being fed into the parent indicator. So what happens is the parent indicator, in this case the EMA, would just come back with a bunch of blank, no data information when this bug happens. So, right, so NinjaTrader's told us that they're planning on fixing this with Ninja version 8, and they're not going to fix it with version 7. So, all right. So, but anyways, that's how you do it, and for the most part, it should be working just fine. If you notice that it stops working, I think really the only solution is just to you can try hitting refresh on the chart a bunch of times, and that might get it working again. Otherwise, you just have to close NinjaTrader and reopen it, restart Ninja to get that working correctly again. So, and okay, so it looks like we have a question from Julie next, and so let's see. This is the last question I have here. So, if anybody else has any question, please feel free. Otherwise, I have some other some other topics I can get to. All right, so Julie is asking, can you please show me how to create a solver that will close a trade after 10 ticks? After 10 ticks. So Julie, I guess I need to know, what indicator you're using to count 10 ticks. I need to know what indicators you're using to see this 10 tick. That way I guess I know if it's I don't know, is it 10 ticks in the same bar? Is this a 10 tick bar? I'm not sure. Alright, so you want a 10 tick profit after the signal. Let's see, okay. Alright, so Julie's suggesting, alright, so she's using an inflection solver, and she wants a 10 tick profit after the signal. So, alright, well, definitely, let's see, the easiest way, I'm sure you probably know this, would be just to, inside of Raven here, to set yourself a 10 tick profit target there. That would be the easiest way. So let's see. And you could also set yourself a 10 tick stop loss as well, if that's what you want. And so if you're wanting to, let's see, let me close that Raven up, and let's see, let me get an inflection solver on here so I get some signals showing up on the chart. Alright, let's see, we got a lot of signals here, so let's kind of zoom in on something here. And you know what, just to make clean my chart up, I'm going to remove this 1 minute chart. Alright, looks like removing that 1 minute chart kind of removed some data, so let's refresh this here again. And Okay, so let me see, just to kind of further dig into what you're wanting to do, Julie. If you're wanting, let's see, so all right, so we have a buy signal here. So if you're wanting a 10-tick offset from, say, the closing price of the bar, if you're wanting a solver to do that, I'm just thinking about this, see if there's a way to do it in BloodHound. You know, the best way, you know, really is to, you know, you need some kind of indicator or something like that, you know, that somehow that calculates this offset price. Because, you know, BloodHound doesn't do calculations like this, right? BloodHound primarily uses your indicator data to do its analysis. Yeah, so I guess, Julian, let me ask, is that, let's see, bar direction. So, Julie, is this what you're wanting to, I guess before I get too far into this, actually, let me use, how about if I use this short signal here, and all right, so there's approximately a 10-tick offset. So is this what you're trying to figure out? Are you trying to get like an exit signal on that bar right there, where price, you know, finally breaks that line? And okay, so you want an exit signal. Let's see. All right, yeah, you know, there is a way we can do this, and it's going to take multiple. Let's see, yeah, it's going to take multiple solvers to do this. So, all right, let me just kind of think this through a little bit in my head. All right, well, actually, let's just go. We'll just experiment here, right? I mean, this is kind of the beauty of BloodHound, is you don't have to know how to do everything, you know, right off the bat. You can just experiment until you get, you know, until you get a solution that you want. All right, so here, this, right, so this inflection solver is kind of the, basically, this is what's generating our signal, right? So, actually, I'll rename this. So conceptually, right, this is our trade signal, right? So this solver, you know, essentially could be made up of a bunch of logic, you know, but what we're wanting is just that, you know, at the output here, you know, this essentially is our trade signal here, you know. So this one solver is just kind of simplifying that, you know, this, you might have a bunch of your own logic back here that's producing the trade signal, right? So you need to find the point in your logic in which you have the trade signal, and then after that point, what we can do is we'll start adding a bunch of comparison solvers here. And so what we're going to start doing is, let me try and draw this out and kind of illustrate what we're doing here. Alright, so there's our signal bar, and let's say, you know, one bar moves forward, so we get the next bar forward. And so what we're going to be doing with this comparison solver is we're going to be, you know, looking at the price, and we're going to be looking back one bar, we're going to be looking back one bar and seeing if, I guess, let's see, in this case, I guess we're going to want, we're going to want to look at the low price of the bar, and with the comparison solver we can ask, is the low price of the bar, more than 10 ticks away from the closing price of the previous bar? So let's set that up here. Alright, so the current bar, we're going to be, so for this short signal, we're going to take the current bar, the low of the current bar, and I'm saying the low because when I scroll forward here, right, we notice that the closing price didn't cross our 10 tick offset, but the low of the bar did. It looks like here, finally on the next bar here, the closing price did actually close below that 10 tick, but let's just say we want to identify when price gets below our 10 tick offset as soon as possible. So that would mean looking at the low of the bar, the low price of the bar there. Alright, so back to bar 1. So we're going to have to create a comparison solver for each bar stepping forward until we finally, get to a bar that breaks our 10 tick offset. Alright, so I'm going to be comparing the high and the low price to the close with a displacement of 1. And I'll explain my name here in just a minute. It'll make sense here in just a moment. Alright, so indicator A, we're going to set that to price since we want to start looking at prices. And let's see. So this is a short signal. So we have a short signal. So as price is moving down, we're going to be wanting to generate a long signal as an exit, right? So long signals will be used to exit a short, a short trade or a short signal, a short entry signal. So a long exit signal exits a short entry signal. All right. So for the long price, so the price type for the long signals here, we're going to want to use the low price. So we're using, so if we go back here, all right, so we're using the low of the bar, the low price of the bar, to generate a long signal here. And then the reverse is going to be true for a short signal to exit a long entry signal. So we're going to use the high price to generate our short signal. So for example, right, we have this, let me get an arrow here. Right, so for example, we have this long signal, and of course if price ever got 10 ticks above that long signal, then we'd want a short signal to exit this long entry. Alright, so we have the prices that we need to use. We have those selected, and alright, so next up in indicator B. So indicator B is, alright, so remember we're working on this bar right now. So we're working on the bar that's after the entry signal is fired off. So indicator A is set to the high and the low price of this bar, And now we need to compare, in this case, we need to compare the low back to the previous bar's closing price, since we're wanting a 10-tick offset of the previous bar's closing price. So we're going to set indicator B to the previous bar's closing price. And let's see, we're going to use a look back period of 2. And you'll notice now, so this is kind of one of the updates that I just did, is when the look back is set to 1, you'll notice that those 2 extra parameters are hidden. And if our look back is greater than 2, then you can see these 2 extra fields open up, right? These 2 extra settings open up. Because these settings only apply when the look back period is 2 or greater. So, alright, so we're looking back, so we have a look back now of 2. So that look back of 2 basically gets us back to the previous bar. And we just want the single value, because we just want the closing price value of the previous bar. So we're going to leave this on single value. So let's take a look here and see what we have. Alright, so I think we're going to have to reverse our outputs here. Right? Because right now, if we think about this, right, the low price of the current bar here is going to be less than the closing price. We're looking for it to be less than the closing price of the previous bar. Right, so we want A, to generate a long signal, we want A. So remember, A is the closing price of our previous bar, and we want it to be less than B, and B is the closing price of our previous bar. So we're going to clear that out, and we actually want to use this output. And so we're going to reverse the short outputs as well. And now the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that A, which is our low price, is A is less than B, right? B is our closing price of the previous bar. We want to make sure that it's less by 10 ticks or more, right? Because we're looking for a 10-tick offset. So we're going to need to put 10 in there. And right, so we can see BloodHound's output, it's going to climb. So, oh, hold on a sec. There we go. So as the price, low price of the bar differs, right? The further away it is from the closing price of the previous bar, our output's going to climb here. But let's see. I'm going to get rid of this analog look and just make it a little cleaner looking. So in a small amount, I'm going to set that to 10 as well. And there we go. Good. There's no output, right? Because right, this low price is not 10 ticks away, not yet. So we actually don't want an output, not yet. So right, we'll get an output when we finally get to this bar over here. So alright, so we built our first solver here. And so now we built our first solver for the first bar after the trade signal. Right? First bar after the trade signal. So now we need to step forward and build a solver that's going to look at the second bar after the trade signal. So now we're going to be looking at the closing price here and comparing it, I'm sorry, not the closing price, we're going to be looking at the low price of this bar and then comparing it 2 bars back. 2 bars back to where our trade signal is. So that's going to require another solver to do that. So So what I'm going to do is take a shortcut. I'm just going to copy the solver I already made. And I'm just going to change the setting here. So instead of looking back 2, I'm now going to use a look back period of 3 instead. Alright. And it's going to take out that space. Alright, so now I need to take this new solver and put it on my logic board. And let's take a look. And good, there shouldn't be a signal yet, and that's because the low price of this bar is not quite, not quite 10 ticks 10 ticks away from the closing price of our signal bar. So we haven't crossed this 10 tick offset yet. So alright, so what we're going to do is now let's get to the third bar. So now we can see on this third bar the low price does actually cross below our 10 tick offset here. So this third solver will generate our signal for us. So let's move this over here. Alright, so our third solver is going to do this type of comparison, right? It's going to look at the low of this bar and compare it to the closing price, 3 bars back. So let me, once again, I'll take one of these solvers, I will make a copy of it, and I'm going to drop it on here, and I'm going to edit it. So this is going to be actually, let me change this. This is actually using a look back. So I'll change my abbreviation here. Alright, so this solver is going to use a look back of 3. So we're looking back to the third bar's back closing price. And alright, this is where I would expect to get a signal. Let's see. Just want to make sure I did everything correctly here. Let's see, maybe I need a look back of 4. Oh, yeah, okay. There we go. So, looks like I'm going to have to build one more. Oh, yeah, you know what? I'm sorry, looks like I got ahead of myself. Yeah, alright, so as I just found out, changing this look back to 4 got me the results I wanted here. Okay. Yeah, so let me set this one to 3. And, oh, I'm sorry. This one did have a look back of 3 already. Sorry, there we go. So this one should have a look back of 4. Alright. Yeah. So let me change the names of my solver. So this actually has a look back of 2. So on my naming convention is so the closing price, right? So indicator B is looking at the closing price down here, and it has a look back of 2. So I need to change my name so it says look back of 2, just so I know what's going on. So we have a look back of 3 here, so there we go. Let's change that to a look back of 3. And this one has a look back of 4. So let's change this look back to 4. And there we go. Alright. So, let's see. Alright, so one thing you'll note is that, right, you'll notice that, right, we did get a signal. We did get a signal right here. So, and that's because, quite literally, let's see, let me draw my arrow here. So we haven't finished the system yet, right? We're just setting up these solvers. So the reason why we have a signal on this bar is because this solver is doing this. Alright, so this solver it's performing its same calculation on every bar, and so on this bar it's looking at the low and comparing it to the closing price, 3 bars back, and it's 10 ticks less. So that's why we get a signal on here. So now it's time to take our trade signal and combine it with each of these solvers separately to filter out, to filter out the long signal on this bar here. Alright, so once we take our trade signal and combine it with these solvers, it'll filter out it'll filter out this early exit signal here on this bar. Alright, so what we need to do is take our trade signal, right? And so our trade signal, it's a short, right? It's a short trade signal, right? But we're building exit signals. So what's coming out of these solvers are long signals. So we need to take our entry signal and reverse it to a long. So that way it matches up with our solvers here that are generating our exit signal. Alright, so let's reverse this. Easiest way to do that is we could use the long short modifier or the inverter. Here, I'll just drop a long short modifier in there because its default setting is to just reverse trade signal. So we can see everything's reversed now, right? So this is now a down signal and this is now a long signal. So there we go. So the long short modifier, its default mode is to swap the signals, right? It just swaps the signals. So, and if I want to, I can change the name of this. Alright, I'll just abbreviate that to reverse the signals. So I'm going to stick this back here a little bit. Okay, now this first solver that we built here, right, there's no output, but if you remember, the first solver we built was designed to look at this bar here. So what I need to do is, let's see, this is a 4 range. Now obviously on a 4 range chart it's going to take multiple bars to get to a 10 tick offset. But if this was a minute chart, right, say this was a 1 minute chart, 5 minute chart, then it would easily be possible for this second bar afterwards to exceed 10 ticks. And so, let's see. So what I need to do is I need to take this signal here. So this reversed entry signal, I need to take it and extend it forward onto the second bar. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the look back. This look back function node. And we can see its default settings is it's using a, in this case we're going to use a displacement here, and it's displaced 1. If I set my displacement to 0, you can see the signal goes back. It goes back to the entry bar. But if I use a displacement of 1, you see it's going to shift it forward 1 bar. So this short signal got shifted forward 1 bar. This long signal got shifted forward 1 bar. Alright, so there's the original short and long signal. And that's what it looks like after we shift it forward 1 bar. And so now that we essentially shifted our modified entry signal forward 1 bar, now we can take this solver and use an AND node and connect these two together. And that's what we expect, no signal, because the second bar after the entry signal didn't exceed our 10 ticks. Let's switch this to a minute chart. Let's see, oil. Yeah, I'll switch it to a minute chart, and we'll see if we get see if we get anything here, any results. All right, might need to shift to a 2-minute chart. See if we get anything on a 2-minute chart. Alright, nothing yet. Let's check a 3-minute chart. Alright, I'm just going to keep going through and try and find an example here. Alright, looks like there's an example. Let's take a look at that. Yeah. Okay, let me zoom in here. Alright, so we're going to take a look at our original entry signal, and let's mark the closing price. So there's our closing price right there. Alright, I'm going to take one of these lines and just offset it down. 10 ticks. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just verifying my logic here. And all right. Actually, I need to get the closing price of this bar here, and let's see. Oh, so it's 94. Okay. All right, let me adjust my lines here. So the closing price of that bar is actually 94. Okay, so once again, it's going to pick this up from the beginning. All right, so here is our short entry signal. Good deal. And let's take a look at the actual exit signal. And so there's our exit signal, and we can see that the low of the bar, right, just broke below by 1 tick, and we got a long exit signal. And this is on the first bar after the entry signal. So what we need to do now is kind of finish building the logic up for in case it takes a second bar after the entry signal, and it might take a third bar after the entry signal. It might take a fourth bar after the entry signal. And you can see essentially we just kind of have to take the same kind of set of logic and just keep it extending it, keep building, you know, a new kind of group for each bar after the entry signal that we want to do. All right, so how about if I put this back to a 1 minute? Okay, so back on our logic board here. So if you remember, let me straighten these out here a little bit. Okay, so this look back, right? So it had a displacement of 1 because it's working on the first bar after the entry signal. So what we're going to need to do is add another look back down here to this solver, right? So this group of solvers, this is looking at the second bar after the entry signal. So we're going to change our displacement on this one to 2, and then group these together with an AND node. And I will need to take our modified entry signal, plug it into the look back, and there we go. So let's take a look at this. All right, so let's take a look once again. Let's take a look at our entry signal here. All right. So we'll just mark it here. There's our entry signal right there. And let's mark the closing price. Okay, so there's a 10 tick offset. And so if we let's take a look at this look back here. So remember, what these look backs are doing is they're taking our entry signal, right, modifying it, and then shifting it forward 1 bar. So this look back here, right, it took our long entry signal, it reversed it, and then shifted it forward 2 bars, and it's now this short signal here. And then when we combine it with this comparison solver, we can see this comparison solver also has a short signal on this second bar, because this comparison solver is taking the high price of the bar and it's comparing it to the closing price of 2 bars back. Alright, so if we look at this solver, how it's set up, so once again, so for the short side, it's looking at the high of the bar and it's comparing it to the closing price with our look back of 3, in other words 2 bars back. So it's doing this kind of comparison, and of course that's why we're getting a short signal here. And then when we combine it with our entry signal, it basically kind of filters it out, because let's see, yeah, so we can see we have a bunch, right? So it's going to create just the solver by itself is going to create a bunch of random signals here, but when we combine it with our entry signal, it cleans it all up. So there we go. Yeah, so now we can see it's all nice and cleaned up, and what we see only applies after we get an entry signal. Okay, and we'll create the same thing for a third bar after our entry. So let's kind of let me go back to the 4 range as a example for this. Let's see, all right, I'm just trying to find that spot where we were working. Okay, so here's the spot where we were working previously with the range bar chart here. Alright, so it took our range bars 3 bars after the entry signal to finally get to our 10-tick offset. So let's take a look at this now. Alright, so we can see that we're going to need to add another look back node down here. And this look back node, its displacement was set to 2. So we'll take this look back node, set its displacement to 3. And we're going to combine it with an AND node here. And take our modified entry signal, plug it into the look back, and let's take a look. And there we go. Alright, so now the last step, since we don't know, how many bars it's going to take to, for price to, to break our 10-tick offset. Right, any one of these conditions, it could happen on any one of these conditions, right? So what we need to do is join them all together with an OR node, so that way any of these conditions get through, and like so. And let me I can name these AND nodes here, so let's see. Like so. Alright, let's take a look at the chart. so let's see. Let's just make sure here. Yep, so there's our short entry bar. And let's see, that's 53 bucks and 4 pennies. So if I shift that down 10 ticks to, yeah, approximately there. There we go. And yep, so this bar is what broke our 10 tick offset, like so. All right, and you know, I think it looks pretty clear there. I think that's this is probably our long entry bar. Yep. So there's our long entry bar. And let's see, the closing price of that bar, $52.90. So 53 bucks even is right there on my crosshairs, and this is the bar that broke that value. All right, we'll just take a quick look on like some minute charts here. It looks like in this area here we would need, you know, several more groups of logic in order to get a exit signal in this group here. So those minute bars eventually got there. Let's take a look at our entry signal. Alright, just a sec while I refresh the chart again. Alright, there we go. So I'll just replace that previous solver. Okay, there we go. And now we got our entry signal here. Let's scale up the chart. So let me mark the entry signal here. There we go. And let me mark the closing price of that bar. And I'm going to add 10 ticks to that line. Alright, so it looks like on our third bar afterwards, it looks like the closing price got to it, but didn't, or yeah, it didn't, looks like it didn't quite get to it, so it took the fourth bar. Oh wait, actually, let's see here. Oh, it did. Okay, did get there. The high of the bar did get there. Okay, so that actually did show up after within 3 bars. But you know, you might need 4 bars, 5 bars. You know, so you might need to create a couple more, you know, groups of logic like this, depending on, you know, how many bars after your entry signal that you need. Right. So, okay. I think that kind of, you know, gets the general idea there. All right. So it looks like I've been asked by a couple of people to turn this into a stop. And okay, so all right, so essentially, right, we built an exit as a profit, right? So all right, so I've been asked by a couple of people to, I guess in a sense, you know, reverse the logic so it can be used as a stop as well. All right, so let's take a look at that. Alright, so first thing I need to do is find a good example on my chart here. Alright, I think this will make a good example. Alright, so we got a short, we'll just say we'll pick on this bar here as our short entry. Alright, so this will be our theoretical example here, this short signal here, putting us in a short trade. And then, let's see, it says make sure that, let's see, yep, sure looks like the next bar afterwards exceeded 10 ticks. So we could use this as an example to trigger a kind of an exit stop signal. All right, there we go. All right, so I think, let's see. I think what I can do is just take these comparison solvers and modify them a little bit. And let's see, I already got the look back that I need. Yeah. All right, so let me kind of make some room here. All right, so I'm going to rename my AND nodes here. So this first set of AND nodes, right, those are taking profit exits. Okay. And that OR node is showing us our profit exits. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a comparison solver and another AND node that will generate the stop exit, right? Okay, so first thing, let's see, I'm going to take this comparison solver, and essentially all we need to do is, right, if we look at our outputs here, right, instead of looking for the low price to be less than the closing price, right, for a short profit, we're going to be looking for essentially the let's see, the high price now. Yeah, the high price to be greater than the closing price as a stop out. So let me take, I'm going to take my first comparison solver, just make a copy of it. And alright, I'll just add the word stop so that we know that it's looking for essentially it's looking for a stop out exit signal. So alright, so I'll add that down here. Okay, so now I need to look and see what logic, or what settings I need to reverse actually. Alright, so now in this case, let's see, we're going to be, so we're going to want to look at the high of the bar and compare it back to the closing price to reverse this. Alright, and so just to get this straight, let's take a look at our original entry signal, right? So we're focusing on this short signal here, right? So it's a short signal, and so we need once again we need a long exit signal, right, to exit us out as a stop. Right, to close out the trade, to close out a losing trade, right, we're going to need a long signal to close out this short entry signal. So we look at the solver, right, so for the long, right, so we need to generate a long signal to close out that short entry. So I'm going to be switching these, so now we're looking at the high price to generate a long signal, and for the short price we're going to need the opposite for a short signal, so let's select the low, and I also think I just simply need to just reverse my outputs here. Alright, and I can see, yep, I can see here, yep, that I'm getting a long output from that solver, but I do need to filter it with my entry signal here. So let me back this up, grab a AND node, let's take a look at that AND node there. Alright, let's take a closer look at this. So what we're seeing now are stop out exits. And all right, let's take a look at this short here. So this short signal is our stop out from a long entry. So alright, so let's zoom in there and take a closer look at that and just verify it. Alright, so if we did take a long entry on this bar here, let's mark the closing price of the bar. And let's see, I'll just make this a little different here. Okay. So I'll move that line down 10 ticks to show us where our 10 tick stop out would be. And great, so there it is. So we can see that the low of the bar, the low of the next bar here, right, did exceed. So the low of this bar did exceed the closing price of our entry bar and marked it as a short signal to exit our long entry, our long trade there. So yeah, so it looks like that's working there. So the next step I'll need to do is just kind of mimic this group again a couple more times. So let me just take this and copy it a couple times. Alright, and then change our copies here. Alright, so there's our 2 extra copies, and now I'll just put them on the logic board here. Alright, so now we just have to put the pieces together. Alright, I'm just going to change the name of these AND nodes so we know what they're doing. Now, if, depending on how you want to break your logic up, I could just connect everything in to this one OR node, like so. And this one OR node is going to give me both. It's going to give me both, basically profit exits and loss exits as well, kind of stop loss exits. And we're not going to know the difference. So when we look at all these signals, we're not going to really know the difference between which one's a profit and which one is a loss. They're just exit signals, right? Telling you to exit either way. You know, if you wanted to kind of keep your, you know, if you wanted to use like one or the other, then what I could do is let me disconnect the stop loss exits. All right, connect that back up in there, and I can add another OR node and simply just connect up the essentially the stop exits. Alright, I can name that OR node there. And so this way, if I wanted to, I could just look at one or the other. You know, so I could set up, you know, I could set up a logic template that just looks at just the profit exits or the stop exits, you know, but most likely you're really going to want both in your system. So you could do something like this. That way I get them all both, you know, or you can just connect all of these AND nodes into one OR node. Right. So when you're talking about AND OR logic, when you have two OR nodes like this feeding into another OR node, really that just means you can just combine both of these OR nodes together. So this is a little overkill, but it's probably easier to visually understand what's going on there. So all right, well, let me take a look at some of the comments here. And all right, I got a suggestion to use the EMA 20 inflection on here, so that ought to kind of clean this up here a little bit. All right, let's put the EMA on here. All right, an EMA 20, and let me change the color. Okay, so there we go. So this is essentially a 10-tick profit and stop exits logic. And let me change my entry logic here to the EMA 20. Actually, and let's change this from price. We'll switch it over to to an indicator, and we'll switch this over to an EMA. Alright. Well, I guess it's a little bit better, but still, sometimes even the EMA there gets pretty choppy. Let's see. Yeah, so it looks like I can tell that the EMA probably turned up ever so slightly there for a long entry, and then we got our stop out, our short signal to stop us out. And yeah, if we go over here, it looks like, yeah, I think we got a short. Looks like the EMA reversed down for 1 bar for a short signal, and then eventually we got a long, let's see, a long stop out, and let's see. Okay, so this bar had a short entry signal on it, and then it looks like we got a long, yeah, I'm sorry, we had a short entry, and then we got a long exit as a profit exit there. So yeah, I mean, this doesn't look as clean as probably your actual trade logic would, just because, you know, our EMA is giving us a whole bunch of crazy entry signals there. So it doesn't make for clean looking exit signals either, right? But we can see it is working correctly. So okay, cool. All right, so Andrew is asking, is it possible to make a price action strategy by nesting the price into an indicator and using the slope solver to place the signals? And yes, absolutely. So actually that's kind of what we've done here. So, you know, if we look at this EMA 20 that we have on the chart, right, essentially this EMA 20 is looking at price, and of course you could feed any price into this EMA 20 that you wanted to, as I showed earlier, you know, using Chameleon. So as I showed kind of earlier in this example, let me zoom in here, right, we have the EMA, right, and we're using Chameleon to feed whatever kind of price we want into that EMA, and then you could use that in the slope solver. So I guess let me just kind of give a quick simple example here. Alright, so let me take this this EMA, or this SMA, and I'll change it to an EMA, but first I'm going to change the name of the solver here. So we're going to use that EMA 20 on our chart. So, alright, change this EMA to a 20. And if I want to use something other than the closing price into the EMA, I can go down here and use Chameleon, and we'll nest Chameleon into there. And if I wanted to, I guess I could use like the weighted price. I could take the weighted price and feed it into the EMA like so. And right, so there we go. We're just looking at the slope, you know, of the EMA using the weighted price. And of course, I don't have the EMA 20 using the weighted price on my chart, but that's what it would look like. And if I wanted to, right, I could also make sure that, you know, that there's a let's see, let me find a good example here. Yeah, so let's say right here where this our EMA is kind of flat. Right, our EMA is flat, so I want to filter that out. Well, I can use this maximum slope setting, and we'll kind of start off with 1/4 of a tick, right, 0.25 on the tick, and like so. And there we go. We can see it kind of got rid of this area where the EMA started to flatten out. So let's see. Let me bump that up to 0.3 ticks, and so it looks like this one bar here did get quite a nice slope up on this one bar, because we got a fairly long bar compared to the previous bars. So, right, so there's kind of an example there. And of course you can just, keep increasing this number, the maximum slope value here, to, filter out whatever you kind of consider as a flat sloping moving average there. All right, Andrew, I hope that works for you. All right, yeah, so Gunter's got a good question here. So Gunter's kind of pointing out that, okay, so let me go back to Julie's question here, right? This 10 tick profit and stop exits, right? So obviously looking forward, Gunter's asking, what happens if we don't know how many bars it's going to take to hit our profit and stop? So he's asking, is there kind of a more fluid way to set up, this logic to work for an indeterminate number of bars? And not without an indicator. So, right, so what needs to be, to make this work, for an unlimited number of bars, what you need is you need an indicator that, let me find an example here. Okay. Let me see, let me find something cleaner. Yeah, here we go. Here's a cleaner place on the chart. So to build a set of logic here that works for an unlimited number of bars, you need an indicator that's going to capture the closing price. So this indicator can extend this closing price forward in time as long as needed. Right? So remember, BloodHound uses your indicators to do indicator comparisons to indicator, or indicator comparisons to price. Right? So yeah, so to make this logic work indeterminately, you essentially would need, let's see if I can extend that. Now this is just a short line, but you would need an indicator that essentially captures the closing price, right, of your entry bar, and just extends it forward for however long needed. And that way BloodHound would have that closing price, for as many bars going forward as is needed. But BloodHound itself doesn't capture prices, right? That's what indicators do. They capture prices. So, I'll just say that, that's one of the features that we're pretty sure that we can build into BloodHound version 2, right? So that's another advanced feature that BloodHound version 2, we're hoping that we'll be able to get this working, and we're pretty sure that we'll be able to get this working in BloodHound version 2. But for now, BloodHound version 1 is going to require an indicator to capture that closing price and extend it forward. So, All right. Let's see. And let's see. Gunter's got like a third comment here, so just a moment. All right. So Gunter's asking, wouldn't it be easier to develop a stop solver with a profit target and stop limit and trailing stop? Well, not as a solver, right? So this is kind of some detailed programming information that, I guess the average NinjaTrader user wouldn't understand until you actually start programming or coding your own stuff in NinjaScript. But an indicator cannot control a strategy. So an indicator cannot control a stop loss or a profit target in a strategy. So, so the real issue is that when Raven fires off a trade, when it fires off a trade, right, and the trade gets executed, and Raven knows what the entry price is, but the problem is an indicator will never know what the entry price is. So Raven can't feed the entry price back to BloodHound. It's a one-way street. So the prices of your trades, your entry price of your trades, the stop loss prices, can't be fed back to BloodHound. That price data can't be fed back to an indicator. So it's a one-way street. So that's why solvers can't be created for the purpose of building like a stop solver or a profit target solver, because BloodHound just can't get that information from Raven. It's a one-way street, right? That's a limitation of NinjaTrader to do that. So we do, however, I will say that Jeremy is working on another strategy that will give you that will have far more advanced profit target and stop loss capabilities, right? So that's really going to be the solution to building more advanced stop loss and profit target functionality. It has to be done in a strategy, right? So basically we're going to come up with another product that will supersede Raven, that will have that capabilities, right? Okay, so Gunter, I hope that makes sense for you. All right, I got some comments here to, I guess, throw this into Raven and see what we get. So, all right, so we'll take this and throw it into Raven here. All right, so I'll throw this into Raven and then we'll let it play out in the background, and I'll answer some questions while this is running in the background here. All right, so this is going to also answer another question here. Let's see. All right, so Steve is asking, is there a way to copy a solver to another template? All right, so let's let me back up here a moment. All right, so Steve, what I'm going to do, right? So you can see we got this complex logic here. So what I'm going to do is, all right, you see this solver here? It's named entry signal. So this is already set up with our EMA 20 just to kind of create a fictitious entry signal that we can work with. So I'm going to take this solver and I'm going to use it in my EMA 20 entry logic right here. So you can see that it's empty, right? It's blank. So what I can do is on the solver tab, right? You see this tracks all the solvers that I've built, right? This shows me all the solvers in one place that I've ever built here. And give me a moment while I rename this crossover here. always a good idea to name your solvers. Okay, so you can see that I have this solver here, this inflection solver that I renamed to trade signal. So I'm going to go back to my logic board, and under the solvers nodes, you can see I have a list of existing nodes, right? Ones that I've already created, and right there is that trade signal. So I can just drop that solver on there and connect that up. All right, so this trade signal solver, this inflection solver, is the exact same entry signal solver on this other logic template. Right? They're both one and the same. So just be aware of that, because if I modify this solver, like say I change my look back to 5 on this one, and if I go back to my other logic template, and if I take a look at this here, and whoa, interesting. It's maybe I didn't finish changing it here. Actually, let's see. Oh, okay. Oops. There we go. I've got two solvers by accident. Okay, we got one called trade signal, one called entry signal. And let's see. Let me make sure which one I'm using. So this is entry, and oh, this one's trade signal. Sorry. Let me get rid of that trade signal. I'm not actually using it, so I'm going to delete it now. Okay. So I'm working with the entry signal. Right? We can see that the look back period here got changed to 5. So I'm going to go back to my logic template, go to my existing nodes, and there's my entry signal. And as I look at it, right, we can see that the look back period got set to 5. But let me go set it back to 1. So when I make a change, so when I change this solver in one of my logic templates, it's going to affect that solver in all the others. All right, so let's take a look at that solver again. And so now we can see the look back period has been changed to 1, right? So just be mindful of that when you're using the same solver in multiple logic templates, that you affect, right? So essentially I'm affecting this one solver. I'm changing this one solver, and it's going to change it on all the other logic templates as well. So if I need, for some reason, if I need an entry solver with a different look back period, what I'll want to do is I'll want to make a copy of it, and then I can change whatever I want, and it doesn't affect the other one. So, all right, let me just delete that. Okay, so, all right, so I have an entry here, and I'll put this in Raven to fire off a bunch of trades. And so I'm going to save a chart template and load this up on another chart. And so I'm going to run Raven on a different chart here. Alright, let me open up my other oil chart, and I'm going to load that chart template that I just saved, like so. Alright, so what I'm going to do is in BloodHound, I'm going to set BloodHound to show me the profit and stop. Show me the profit and stop targets there. And let's see. probably, I think this might work better if I change this to a 5-range oil chart. All right. Okay, so now let me put Raven on here. All right, load up our BloodHound template. So there we go. And when you're working with Raven, it's always a good idea just to take a look at your logic templates. So there's our entry. That's going to be our exit logic. And it's always a good idea just to kind of check the leaders, make sure everything looks good, make sure I didn't leave it, you know, in some kind of a broken state or some kind of a test state where I was demonstrating something. Alright, so that all looks good. Alright, I'm going to put it back on my entry logic. And alright, so let me set my entry logic to the entry template. I'll set my exit logic to the logic template that's going to exit my trades, like so. And I'm just going to leave no profit, no stop loss. Right, we're going to let the exit logic close this out. And I'll just do something simple, right? Just a quantity of 1. And alright, let's turn this on. And I'm going to turn backtest mode off, just so it loads up a little quicker. So if you turn this backtest mode off, Raven will load up quicker because NinjaTrader doesn't have to do all that backtesting. So that also means that there won't be any backtest results either when I do this, right? Okay, right, so remember I turned off the backtest mode. So if I go to my strategy performance, if I look in here, it's going to be blank, right? Because we told Raven, you know, don't execute any historical trades to do backtesting with. So therefore, it's empty. But the you know, the Raven loads up a little faster. Alright, well, we're just going to have to wait for our EMA price to move down, so our EMA reverses here and give us a trade signal. Alright, so we'll just let that run in the background there, and I'll answer some more questions. Alright, good deal. Looks like we got a trade firing off here. And if I shrink my chart up, we can see there's no profit, there's no live profit and stop target, right? We're using the BloodHound's exit logic to actually close out the trade. So when you're doing this, right, Raven's just going to submit a market order to close out the trade. Alright, so I'm just going through the comments here, see if there's any other questions I can answer. It looks like Gunter might have another question here. Alright, is there a way to extend the reverted entry signal? Let's see, shown earlier. Let's see, to some of the bars in the future. Let's see, in a dynamic way, where, for example, a signal is generated. Let's see, a signal is generated by a slope solver. Okay, so let's see. So yes, Gunter. All right. So let me, I guess, restate this question again. So what Gunter would like to do is, let's see, let me open up this BloodHound here.
Order filled.
And, well, doesn't, let's see. Yeah, so unfortunately, the EMA reversed on us before a 10-tick stop or 10-tick profit got met. All right. Well, hopefully, it looks like oil is on a upswing here for today. So maybe this long entry here will get stopped out as a profit target here. Let's see. Hopefully, oil can break above this high here that it set. And yeah, it looks like we're going to get a profit target fired off here. Cool. Okay. All right, so let me get back to Gunter's question. All right, so, all right, let's see. So this chart over here on the left, we can see it's showing us our EMA 20 entry signals here. And so what Gunter would like to know is if we take the reversed entry signal, all right, so if we take this long entry signal and we reverse it, all right, so we get a short, so we turn it into a short output. Can we extend that forward, so, into the future somewhat indefinitely, and then use a slope solver, and so we want to use a slope solver to act to apply a stop rules. Yeah. Okay. Yes, we can do that. All right. And hold on. Let me take a look. Hold on, Gunter. Before I get there, let me take a look at Raven. It looks like we should have got a exit. Okay, let me see what happened here. Oh, shoot. Yeah, you know what? It may have taken too many bars. Ah, yes, it took too many bars. Darn. All right, so I'm gonna
Order filled.
let me close that out of Raven. Okay, so let me build another set. Yeah, let me build another set of another group of exit logic here.
Order filled.
Okay, so I'm just going to build this real quick here and throw this into Raven.
order, fill. Order, fill.
All right. Yeah, so if I had, this exit logic, set to look at 4 bars out, I can see here now that this, let me get an arrow on here, right? So we had this long entry here,
Order,
and then we
fill.
would have gotten closed out over there. So, all right, so let me see. So I need to save this now, right? So I need to save this because I had this BloodHound window is coming from this other chart over here. So by closing the interface, it saves the file. And now what I need to do is load that new file up over here. So I'm going to open up BloodHound and just open the new file. And I can see this new file now has those 2 solvers on it. And, oh, actually, sorry. This is the chart that has the old file on it. So let me load up the new one. Okay, there's the 2 new solvers. Good. And I also need to load it into Raven. So I'm loading the new file into Raven. There we go. There's our 2 new solvers. And I'll take a quick look at our exit logic. All right. Yep. So good. It's got 4 groups in it now. All right. So I'm gonna disable Raven.
Order,
Close
fill.
the trade out and hit F5. Uh-oh. Alright, I'm going to hit F5 on the chart. The way I'm doing this is probably not the best practice. I really should have disabled Raven and then loaded up the new file, just to be safe. So I'm going to go in here and just double check Raven settings. Alright, so our entry and our exit, good deal. Make sure everything's okay. And alright, so we can see Raven's on the bottom panel here, and that's showing our entry signals. And then BloodHound on the top here is showing our exit signals. Alright, well, we're just going to have to wait for price to kind of cooperate with us and get us into another trade. Alright, so while we're letting Raven play out here, let me get back to Gunter's question. Alright, so we're gonna, let's see, let me turn off the trade signals on this chart. Alright, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this long entry signal, and Gunter wants to take the the reversed part of this entry signal, right? So remember, we took this long signal and we reversed it, so that way we could turn it into a short, exit logic to exit our trade. And then, so we're going to extend it forward, essentially, as long as needed. And, oh, look at that. All right, cool. looks like that worked. Alright, so we got an entry at 5246, and so our exit right was at 56 cents. Yeah, so our entry was at 46 cents and our exit was at 56 cents, and we can see that this bar here closed above it, and so therefore, as soon as the bar closed, Raven closed out that trade for a profit. Nice. Well, isn't that a nice example to have? Isn't that what we all want? All right, good deal. Okay, sorry. So let me get back to Gunter's question here. All right, so I'm gonna take the logic template that I've already built here. All right.
Order, filled.
And so this is what Gunter's talking about. Let me zoom in here. Right. So we have our entry signal here, and then we reversed it. And so, right, we had to reverse it to turn it into an exit logic. And so we're going to take this reverse signal and extend it forward. So we can apply some other rules to create a different type of exit strategy. Alright, so let's see. So, yeah, I think it'd be better if I just create a new logic template, and I'm not sure what I'm going to call it yet, so I'm just going to leave this name here as is, but I'm going to put our some existing solvers on here. So we want to start with our entry, right, with our entry signal. And let's zoom in here a little bit. Here. I'll work over here. That way you guys probably want to watch Raven here. Yeah, it looks like our EMA turned down, created a short, and got stopped out. Yep. All right, so we have our entry signal. So we're going to reverse it. So we'll use the long short modifier to reverse that. Alright, I'm just going to rename it so I know what this function node is doing here. Alright, so if we take a look at our signal, right, there's our long signal, and we use the long short modifier node to reverse it, like so. Right, so it's in swap mode here. And okay, so now to take this and extend it forward indefinitely, as long as whatever needed, we're going to use the toggle node to do that. So let me take this toggle node and connect it up to the input, and let's take a look at the output here. Alright, so
order filled.
Alright, let me put some arrows on the chart here so we can see all these entry signals here. Right, so we got 3 of them on there. So now let's take a look at the toggle node. Right, so we can see the toggle node. Right, it's essentially when we get our entry signal, it's staying in a short state, and then when we get a short entry, right, then the toggle node stays in a long state. Right, so we can see that the toggle node is essentially staying in the opposite state of the entry signal. Right, that's because we reverse the signal going into the toggle node. So, and you can see the toggle node, when a signal comes in, on a signal, we force the state on. Right, so let's take a look at what's coming in. Right, so when we get this long, short signal coming in into the toggle node, it forces the short state on, but then the opposite signal gets turned off. So in other words, so when the shorts get forced on, the opposite signal, which would be the long side gets forced off, right, and vice versa. So we can see, right, vice versa. So this is, so here you go, Gunter. This is how you would hold on, you know, to, that's how you would hold on to, you know, your entry signal state, and then he would want to apply a some kind of SMA here to actually trigger the exit. So let's see, let's add something to the chart here. Let's add let's see, how about something exotic like an HMA? Wonder if see what an HMA 5 looks like. Alright, what the heck, I'll just use an HMA 5. I think it looks good enough for an example. And I think that purple's a little hard to see on top of the orange bar, so let me, let's see, let me change the color here. How about if I go for a green? All right. I hope that stands out enough, and let me, there we go. Okay, there we go. So now I put the indicator on top of the price bars. Okay. So what we're going to do essentially is when we get this long entry signal, we're going to wait for our moving average to essentially reverse down, and that'll kind of generate the exit the exit logic. Instead of using an offset as a price offset as we did before. Alright, so let's get into our logic template here. Alright, so essentially what we've created so far is we're just holding on to like the reverse entry state, right? So whenever we get an entry signal, we're holding on to the opposite state. So the next thing let's see. Yeah, the next thing we'll want is an inflection solver. So since we're looking for when the HMA slope. We're looking for when the HMA slope changes, essentially. At least I'm guessing that's what Gunter wants. So Gunter just mentioned the slope, but I think the inflection solver is probably more appropriate. All right, so take a look at the inflection solver here, and we're going to feed the HMA 5 into it. So let's change our indicator over. Of course, you can use whatever moving average you want. Okay, so looking at, the reversal or the inflection of the HMA, here's what we get. So we get the short signal here after the HMA turns down, like so. So the next step is, let's see, I think we just need to join these two together with an AND node, and let's see what we get. Alright, yeah, so here's our entry signal bar, and then this would show us when we would exit. Alright, so the short signal is going to show the exit. So we can see that we're getting extra exit signals on here, but that's okay. If we've already exited on this bar, then when this exit signal shows, there's no trade to exit anymore, right? Because Raven hasn't taken another trade yet, so this would just be ignored by Raven because there'd be no trade on. So, and let's see. All right, so we get a short signal here. And I would, let's see, I would think we would have oh, no, there's no, okay, yeah, so one thing to kind of keep in mind here is, so this marks a short trade, and you would think that when the HMA reverses, that it would give us a long signal. But what happened is that we actually got a long entry signal. So that kind of negated that negated the short exit. What happened is, if we take a look at this, right, we can see the toggle node flipped over. The toggle node flipped over to the long entry state. So if we take a look at our inflection solver, right, it's giving us a long signal to, it's giving us a long signal to exit this short trade. However, our toggle node, our toggle node flipped over to a short state. So that's why we didn't actually get an exit here. So let's see. This may or may not work for your logic. It really kind of depends on how your entry signals work. It depends on how Raven works. But normally, right, what Raven would do is, if it took this short trade and then this long entry signal came in, Raven would just reverse you. So you really don't need an exit logic, because Raven would just reverse you. And if Raven, is reversing your trade, right, it's going to close out your short automatically to reverse you long. So you don't need an exit. You don't need an exit signal for this short trade. So, All right, Gunter made a comment here that the crossover should trigger the exit. So I'm guessing that what Gunter is commenting out is, yeah, we can see that we get a crossover of our HMA and of our HMA and EMA. You can see we get this crossover. So if you wanted to use that as your exit, instead of the inflection solver, obviously you could do that.
Order filled.
Right? You could just replace this inflection solver here and just use a crossover solver instead to create your exit logic. So you could just replace this with whatever you want. But I think the key component that Gunter's looking at is this toggle node. Right? So once you got this toggle node working, then you know what essentially this toggle node is giving you the exit state, right? So essentially when we get a long signal, we're ready for a exit state, right? So a short signal is going to give us an exit state. So I could rename this toggle node to call it an exit state. Right, and of course you can just use whatever kind of other exit logic you want in placement of this inflection solver here. Got a comment here just pointing out that obviously waiting for a crossover does put a lot of delay in exiting, so I'm sure you guys all realize that. Yep. So yeah, I guess another crossover that you could consider is like right here, when the closing price crosses the HMA, that could, you could also look at that crossover as a potential exit, exit requirement there. Okay, yeah, so Gunter has a question about the inverter node. Alright, so let me pull up BloodHound and look at that. Alright, so we've got Raven and a long trade here, and let's see, 69. So sorry for the pause here. Let's just let me shrink this up. I just want to mark where our profit and exit should be. All right. Okay, we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully one of our profit or stop hits gets hit before this EMA reverses on us. I don't know. It may or may not happen. All right, so back to Gunter's question about using the inverter node. So let's go back to, yeah, we'll use this logic here. So what he's talking about is, this long short modifier node, this function node, right? What it's doing is, if we take a look, yeah, there we go. So we can see this long signal coming out of our entry signal solver, and if we take a look at what's coming out of the long short modifier, you can see it basically reversed it, right? It flipped it, and so that's using this swap mode, right? So swap mode is just swapping a long output into a short output and a short output into a long output. So Gunter's question is, can you use the inverter node to do the same thing? And yes, we can. So we plug the inverter node in there. So its default state, if we look at the chart, it's actually inverting everything, right? So we can see inverting is quite a bit different than reversing. But with the inverter here, right, it also has a swap long and short, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the invert function off. Right, so you can see on the long side and on the short side it has these two invert functions. So I'll turn those off. Turn both of those off. Right? So really it's doing nothing right now. Remember that it's originally this is a long signal, and if we take a look at the inverter, it's doing nothing now. But if we turn the swap on, set this to true, now we can see it swapped it, reversed it. So you can accomplish the same thing with two different nodes. Yep, we can use one or the other. Okay, Jim is asking, what is the difference between a chart template and a BloodHound template? Okay, sure. So, right, so chart templates, right, NinjaTrader has the ability to save what they call a chart template, right? So really what this does is, whenever you build a chart and you save a bunch of indicators, and you have all your indicators with the periods that you like and all the color settings, and so this chart template basically saves how this chart has been set up, right? So it saves all your indicators that's on the chart, it saves all the colors, it saves all the periods, for your moving average periods and stuff like that, right? So this chart template will reload all your indicators back on the chart for you nice and conveniently. The BloodHound template, well, the BloodHound template only works inside of BloodHound, right? So essentially all these solvers and all the settings for the solvers, all your logic templates and everything here, right, that is saved inside of BloodHound's template, right? So that file, the file that BloodHound creates, is the BloodHound template, which has all of this information saved in that file. So that's the difference. So, all right, I hope that helps, Jim. Okay, guys, once again, have a great weekend, and hope to see you guys next Friday. Right? Thanks. Bye-bye, guys.